Guys, unless you can get crystal clear about what you want and how to create a plan to accomplish your goals, it will be difficult to realize any measure of success in your life. So my guest today, retired Navy SEAL Commander Mark Devine, makes the case for the power of silence, meditation, and the mind when it comes to laying the framework for your future success.
You're a man of action. You live life to the fullest, embrace your fears, and boldly chart your own path. When life knocks you down, you get back up one more time, every time. You are not easily deterred or defeated. Rugged, resilient, strong. This is your life. This is who you are. This is who you will become. At the end of the day, and after all is said and done, you can call yourself a man.
Guys, glad you're back today. I'm Ryan Mickler, the founder of Order Man, and we have got a great show lined up for you today with a retired Navy SEAL, all about silence, meditation, concentration, and the power of the mind. You will want to make sure you stick around also to the end of this episode because Mark gives us one of the best answers I've ever heard on what it means to be a man. You can tell he's thought a lot about that and he gets fired up about the topic. Now, before we get into that episode, I do want to humbly ask that you leave us a rating and review for the show. If you've listened to some of the other episodes, I hope that you've gained some value from that. And if you're listening for the first time today, I know that you'll see the value that we bring on this show. So head over to orderman.com/iTunes. And please, if you would, leave us a review. And remember, as always, we've got the show notes for this show up, and they can be found at orderman.com/016. Now let's get to our guest. Today I have the pleasure of introducing retired Navy SEAL Commander Mark Devine. Mark's first career of all things was as a certified public accountant. 4 years later, he left the corporate world to pursue his vision to become a Navy SEAL officer. Now at 26, he graduated as Honor Man, which is the number one ranked trainee of his SEAL Buds class. He then served for 9 years total on active duty and 11 as a reserve SEAL, retiring as commander in 2011. He is the founder of NavySeals.com, which is a leading website for gear and information about the SEALs. And then later he launched US Tactical, which is a program that has been credited with increasing the quality of Navy SEAL candidates, also reducing the attrition rate at Buds by up to 5%, and then it was also the inspiration of his new program, which I'm excited about, which is SEAL Fit. So Mark Devine is an accomplished martial artist, a yoga instructor, and also the author of Unbeatable Mind and the Way of the SEAL, which we talk a little bit about in this episode. Mark Devine, I'm so excited to have you on the show. I'm honored to have you here. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, I'm pretty stoked. Nice to meet you.
So one of the things I'm really interested in is your business background, which is probably the reason that you've been so successful in some of your endeavors outside of what you've done with the Navy SEALs. Mm-hmm. And you had somewhat of a different into your Navy SEAL training and your military career. Can you tell me a little bit about your background?
Sure thing, yeah. Most people are kind of surprised when I tell them that prior to being a Navy SEAL, a root and toot and frogman, I was actually a CPA, Certified Public Accountant in New York State. How's that?
A little bit, big difference.
Big difference, yeah. But it was one of those things where I went to a small liberal arts school called Colgate University, which was about 40 minutes from where I grew up. And my family was a business family. We have a company that's over 100 years old. So it's been passed down generation to generation now, like 4 times now. And so it just kind of, hammered into us that we were a business family and that, we were going to ultimately end up at the family business. And so when I went to Colgate, I majored in economics. And then after Colgate, or right at the end of the 4 years there, I ended up, applying for positions like my friends were all, getting these great jobs in finance and, whatnot. I guess we're going to medical school. Those were kind of the big two, right. Or law school. And so I kind of just followed that bandwagon. I didn't really know what else to do. It's interesting. I wasn't really clear at that point in time. I just kind of thought that was what was supposed to happen. So I ended up getting hired by Coopers and Lybrand, and it was a group of us, and they sent us to NYU to get our MBAs, and there I was, just kind of chugging along.
Doing your thing.
Yeah, doing my thing. I'm studying for the CPA exam and going to school at night and just working my tail off during the day, and it literally was a 4-year odyssey of just nonstop studying and work and then trying to maintain my physical training and regimen in the cracks, early before work, and at lunchtime I would go work out and train, and then
right.
Joined a martial arts studio, and so I would cram in a class on my way from work to NYU, which was down by the World Trade Center. So that was, I was a business guy before I became a Navy SEAL, but in big business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when it just seemed natural that when I left the SEALs that I would get back into business. It kind of made sense, but I didn't want to go back into a big corporate role. I mean, the Navy is corporate, and of course Arthur Anderson and Coopers, who I'd worked with earlier, were corporate, and so I thought I'd go into the entrepreneurial route. And SEALs are pretty entrepreneurial anyways. Most special ops are, but SEALs in particular, so it made sense for me to do that.
Why do you say SEALs are entrepreneurial? Is it something in them that just that drive or competition? What makes it that way?
Yeah, well, it really is the type of person who's attracted to the program and the way we train our minds in the program. It's very different than any other branch or service. The SEALs are a very small unit, about 1,800 of us. It was much smaller when I went through. It was about half that size. And, one of our terms was Semper Gumby. The Marine Corps is Semper Fi, which is always faithful, and the SEALs was Semper Gumby. Basically that little green bendy.
Yeah.
Gumby. So we were always flexible. And so we trained ourselves to never get rigid in our thinking, never to accept the plan as the final plan, right? To always be juking and jiving and figuring things out along the way. And just so happens that mindset is utterly, perfectly suited for entrepreneurship.
Right, yeah, we've got to deal with so many ups and downs and trials and things that we've got to overcome. Like you said, Semper Gumby, right?
Semper Gumby.
That's right. I like that. I didn't know that. I actually read that in your book, I think, just over the past couple of days and saw that. So that was pretty interesting.
That would be a great title for a book, actually. I think I'm going to copy it.
It would catch people's attention, definitely.
Yeah.
So the question I have is, what happened then? Was there some big event, or just over time? Because I know exactly what you're saying. I'm a financial advisor by trade, so trying to find time to work on my physical strength and work on mental fortitude and toughness, those things are hard because sometimes I'm just behind the desk getting busy. So what happened for you that made you make this big shift in your life?
Well, I was very fortunate to kind of connect with my first mentor, like the who I would consider my formative mentor. And it was through this martial art that I had started, which was about 300 or 400 feet from where I lived in 23rd Street in Manhattan. It was the world headquarters of Seido Karate, S-E-I-D-O. And Kaicho, which means Grandmaster Nakamura, was the head guy, and he had created this art. And when I started training there, he became my teacher because he taught quite a bit there. It was a really neat model. I mean, he had thousands and thousands of students around the world, but he made it a point to not be flitting around the world, but to stay right there and let people come to him. That's kind of a cool model. I was trying to follow that with SealFit, but it's still a little challenging. So anyways, he was very much into mind, body, spirit. But what I loved about him in retrospect is he didn't just talk about it. He was deliberate about how to train it. The body part was easy, and a lot of people get that. And most martial arts and yoga today is just about the body. Just move the body, sweat, physical fitness, functional fitness. In the martial arts, use the techniques and learn the techniques and master them. And then, the prevailing wisdom is that over time, you're going to cultivate a stronger mind and mental toughness. Well, Nakamura said, that's great, but we're also going to develop our mind through meditation and through lecture and through team, type of training that developed emotional strength and those types of things. And so, what really cracked me open was sitting on the meditation bench, with the Zen practice. We had these little austere wooden benches, and we sit on it, and we'd meditate for 45 minutes at a time.
Oh, wow.
And, it's for anyone who's tried that, it's hard to even do 5 minutes at a time. So it took me a year or two, I would say, before I could really clear my mind and stay focused and, concentrate for more than a few minutes at a time. And that process of deepening my concentration, then clearing my mind, my rational mind, one that's always just like constantly churning about this and that, the one that was, listening to all the bullshit about what I should do and my relationship to my peers and money and all that. All those belief systems were there and bubbling up, but when you sat in silence and you're able to concentrate over time, you're able to settle your mind, and then you're able to examine those things because they really stand out in stark contrast. When the noise is loud, you can't really pay attention to those patterns because they're just kind of get mixed up in the noise. But when the noise settles down, those patterns become really, really obvious. And so I was able to look at those patterns and, examine them and say, you know what, if this is what I'm supposed to do, then why am I miserable? If this is what I'm supposed to do, why don't I care about the money? If this is what I'm supposed to do, why do I have no interest or passion for going back to the family business? And I started to examine those, and then the contrast to all that is if that's not what I'm meant to do, if I'm not meant to be a CPA / family business guy, then what? What is meant to be? What am I meant to do? And so it was just this odyssey that took me, about 3 years to work through. And what came up was that I actually was a warrior, and I was, never taught to be a warrior. I was never led to be a warrior, but it was coming out of me, through this martial arts practice and through this silence practice that I was meant to be a warrior, and I was meant to, lead in a more adventurous life, and sitting in a chair and being in a suit certainly wasn't it for me. And, at 20, I was now 24 years old, that I had, I had the rest of my life in front of me, and I wanted to be, super happy, and not happy. I mean, I wanted to be happy, but I wanted to be content with my life
fulfilled,
choices, and fulfilled. And I didn't want to be on my deathbed and thinking, God, I wish I had done something besides be a CPA or a business guy.
I'm glad we're having this conversation, because I think a lot of the times, and I'm guilty of this too, as men, it's like go, 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 and we get into a routine or we get into a habit, and we think that this is the right thing we need to do as men to be able to provide. And sometimes that's what it comes down to, is we feel like, hey, the responsible thing, if I've got a family or somebody relying on me, is to continue down this direction. And so to have the clarity from just silence and, like you said, meditation, seems like it's been pretty valuable for you.
It's extremely valuable for me, and it continues to be to this day. I was just fortunate enough to kind of find it in my early 20s, and I never stopped. And, it really helped me dramatically, even in the SEAL training. I mean, I really kind of sailed through my training class. It was hard work, but it wasn't that hard, because I had trained my mind to really stay focused and to be positive and to what I call see the win in my mind. I could clearly see myself succeeding at every task that was thrown at me. And I was able to maintain a really, really clear mind and focused on the right things, and was able to help my teammates out. And all those skills just proved to be extraordinarily valuable. And I ended up as honor man in my class because of that. And it was a lot of what I learned from Nakamura, and a little bit before that when I was in competitive sports and using visualization techniques for that. But,
where would you suggest that a man starts when, maybe he's listening to this, I'm listening to this and thinking, okay, this is more valuable than initially I would have thought. And I've talked with a lot of successful men who would agree with you and share your sentiments when it comes to that. Where do guys start who, they've never taken a deep breath and they've never stopped for a second to think about their life? How would you suggest somebody gets into silence and meditation and clarity?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's such a good question, because it really kind of depends upon where you're at and your level of urgency to change, right? To grow. So if you're kind of just lukewarm about it and you just want to dip your toe in it, then, that's cool. Just start meditating, right? Or go to start yoga practice. But if you're deeply moved to begin to change process, then that's cool, because, the first step is to commit to developing yourself, commit to deepening your awareness so that you can learn the answers to the questions of, who am I? Why am I on this planet? What am I meant to do? So you can clarify your purpose and your passion and your principles, and then set sail in that direction. So it takes a deep commitment to really begin a process of self-awareness and self-discovery. Now, the tools are, there are many paths to follow, as you know. I say there's many paths to enlightenment. Just choose one and stick with it. So for me, the path was, initially it was through the martial arts, hard physical training coupled with daily periods of silence, right? Not random, not like, oh, I'm quiet now because I'm sitting on the bus, or, you know what I mean? But you literally are sitting either on a chair or on a mat, and you are practicing silence. So that's where I kind of start with my Unbeatable Mind program. I say, okay, let's start out with practicing silence. But what I do is I use a breath control practice I call box breathing. So it's super powerful because it has the added benefit of basically regulating their arousal control, their response to stress.
Mm-hmm.
And so the process I have them do is breathe through their nose, deep into their belly, and have a breath hold at the inhale and after the exhale. And I, have them breathe in this kind of box pattern. It's called a
4-second pattern, I think is what it is, right?
It can be anything really, but most people at the beginning, 4 or 5 is, even 5 can be a stretch, especially on the exhale hold.
Mm-hmm.
When I do it, I usually do it like a 10 count across the board, so it becomes a 40-second threshold,
Oh, wow.
40-second duration breath, or my threshold where I'm comfortable is around 55 or so like that. So it's like
Wow.
where I'm able to breathe like one breath a minute using this pattern, and it's very, very calming. It's very good for your nervous system, and it doubles as a concentration practice. Now, meditation is a very big, broad category, and so most people think that anything where you're just sitting with your eyes closed is meditation, and that's probably accurate, but it doesn't mean you're doing anything that's going to benefit you, right?
Right.
And so the first step of meditation is to concentrate on something that gives your mind a hook or a focal point, so that 2 things will happen. One is you deepen your powers of concentration, your ability to concentrate on one thing for extended periods of time. So it sharpens your focus. And 2 is it causes the rest of your rational mind to kind of slow down and to step out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
So an unconcentrated mind bounces from one idea to another. Any type of stimulus or external, internal, will cause your mind to spin up and spin around. And, people just get all these, they get stuck in these ruts and loops that just lead them in circles all the time. And so they have difficulty really focusing on a long-term goal or project. They have difficulty finishing things because, emotionally they get stuck on, fear of success or fear of failure or fear of anything really. And then that spins their mind out of control, and then they're off to the next thing, and we live in a distracted world, and there's more and more distractions coming at us every day. And now we carry our distractions around with us in our iPhones or our Android devices, and we're always on them, as opposed to taking time to concentrate and focus and sharpen our mind. So box breathing, to answer your question specifically, I would say if you're listening to this and you want to start down the path of clarifying your life, sharpening your focus, maybe making some better decisions and shifting so that you can be more successful, more happy, more peace of mind, even provide more for your family, then the starting point is our box breathing practice, which is going to make you very calm, very centered, very focused, and clear out all the garbage in your mind that's causing you to make decisions that aren't optimal.
Right, interesting. I want to go back to something you said that was pretty intriguing to me, and I've had a little bit of an experience with this. You said that you sailed through BUDS and SEAL training relatively easy, although it was difficult. Right. And I actually ran across this in 1999. I went through basic training, which is, of course, not nearly to the level of training that you had, right. But I saw this in the men that I was training with. Some guys just had it together and some just didn't, and it didn't have that much to do with physical strength. Right. It had more to do with their mental fortitude. Can you talk a little bit about why that is?
Sure. Well, physical strength is easy to come by, right? It really just takes some time and some effort. And in those training programs, in SEAL training, and to a lesser extent in some of the other programs like what you went through, the point isn't to test your physical. You got to have that. That's like a prerequisite, right? If you don't have it, you won't get in, or you won't get very far, for sure. And so, injury or something will crop up. But the reality is, for the SEAL program, most people had the physical, or else they didn't make it to the front door, right? There's thousands of people who try every year, and there's about 975 or so who make it into the front door of BUDS, and there's about 225 who make it out. So there's only 225 new SEALs minted every year. Well,
right.
Everyone who comes into the program is physically capable because you just have to be. So like you said, now what happens is we get tested on the physical, but the way you react, the way you respond to the instructors, your ability to deal with the nonstop grind day in and day out for 9 or 10 months, the ability to focus on the right goals, that are going to lead you to success, and the ability to manage your mind so that you maintain a positive state all the time and are able to lead your team and to be led by your team. So these are all the things that are being judged and graded by the instructor staff. And they all have to do with the ability to control your mind and control your emotions, which leads to, mental toughness and resiliency. And so those become the gold standard skills. And it's not so much, who's the biggest physical stud. I've seen many, many physical studs quit, and just bail on the training. And a lot of times, like the athleticism, the all-star athletes where things have come easy for them and they're used to a lot of praise, those guys don't make it either very often. Often they don't make it because in the SEAL training, nobody cares how many touchdowns you threw or passes you caught in your high school football team or college. Everybody's a stud, right?
Right.
And there's Olympic athletes who go through SEAL training. So nobody cares how athletic you were. What they want to know is, are you going to be a good teammate? Do you have my back? And in order for you to have my back, you've got to be in control. You've got to have a positive attitude, right? You've got to be able to be useful to the team in the most extreme circumstances. You can't be a Rambo where you're hunkering down and say, I got it, I can get through this. When the shitstorm starts, you got to look around and say, okay, guys, who needs help? You know what I mean? And you're actually more concerned about your teammates than you are about yourself. And when the whole team is acting like that, it's this incredibly powerful thing. It's one of the reasons the SEALs are so successful is you got 16 guys in a task unit who are all looking out for each other's, more than they're looking out for themselves. And, you tend to have an accelerating effect on performance when you got 15 other guys supporting you like that.
Right, just exponentially. How do they do that? How do the trainers test for that ability to work as a team? What are some of the things they do?
Well, a lot of the drills and skills that they teach are things you just can't do alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Aside from the individual fitness things, like, okay, we're going to go out and do a 5-mile time run. Okay, that's pretty much a solitary thing. It's an individual performance. You can do that on your own. Right? Individual performance. But even on an ocean swim, like a 5-mile ocean swim, you are swimming with your swim buddy. You can't just haul. Let's say he's a little bit slower than you. You can't haul off and leave him. Now you are there. You're swimming face to face, side by side, in sync for 5 miles or 6 miles, and it's extremely potent, team exercise. It's really intimate. Just say, in a different way. You know what I mean? It's like you are literally breathing in sync for that long in the water. That, if you can't do that, right? If you can't, get out of your little limited self and just sync up with another human being, you fail at evolution. That's one small example. Other things where they make you do something as a team, like take your boat through the obstacle course. The boat's a few hundred pounds. Now you got to take the boat up the cargo net and down the cargo net. How do you do that?
Yeah.
You can't. You have to be a good teammate. And so they do, it's like the ultimate leadership program where you get tested on all these individual skills and performance. Every week you have to improve your scores on the obstacle course, on the runs, and on the swims. You have to put out on the PTs, the physical training. But then they also watch your performance as a teammate. They watch your willingness and your readiness, without prompting, to lend support to your teammates or to be there for your teammates. They watch your ability to receive support. They watch your eyes. Are you hunkered down and just focused on your stuff, or is your head on a swivel, constantly looking for opportunities to help your team? And then they also do a 360 review, and so they survey all of your teammates, asking for feedback, and they have the students kind of rank based upon their leadership skills and their teaming skills and that type of thing. So the instructors end up getting a very, very good picture of who is going to be a good team member, who's going to be the kind of guy you can rely on in combat. And those are the guys who end up making it, really.
That's really interesting.
One last thing on that is like, a lot of the guys, if you don't quit, or get injured, and just because you're a super stud, the instructors, if they don't want you on the team, if they know that you're going to suck as a teammate, they will find a way. They'll find a way to get you out,
Yeah, because it sounds like, some guys, like you said, probably just tough through it, right? Yeah. Just physically just tough through the issue, and they can make it through some of those trainings. Interesting. Yeah. I'm intrigued that you said receive help, receive help from those around, because I think as guys we tend to be prideful. Like, it's more noble to go at it alone, I think.
Right.
And so we block or we turn off those people who are trying to reach out and trying to lend a hand, rather than saying, yeah, I could use a hand up. And there's nothing weak or dishonorable in that if you're all trying to accomplish the same goal.
Totally. It just brought to mind an incident I had when I was like in 5th grade. There was some kid who was kind of getting picked on. He was a big kid, but he was getting picked on. Not being the brightest tool in the shed. And I went up to him to offer him some assistance, and he punched me in the face.
Oh, yeah. I
remember that like yesterday. I'm like, why did you just punch me in the face? I was so not only did it hurt, but I was like, what the hell?
Yeah, you're trying to help the guy.
Yeah, that was the point you made, is he wasn't ready to receive any help. He didn't think he was supposed to or needed to. His dad probably thought it was a sign of weakness and taught him that. And what we learned in the SEALs is it's not weakness to receive help, and it's strength to give help. And we learned very quickly that nobody can do it alone, and no mission is accomplished alone. Even if you are a sole sniper out in the field, you have tens, if not hundreds of people supporting you, and you rely on all of them. The shit hits the fan. These guys are and ladies are out there to bring you back home. Rambos don't make it. They really don't. And that's a whole fallacy. Makes for a good movie, but it's not real in a special ops setting or any corporate setting for that matter. I think
corporate setting, athletics. I mean, you name it, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't. No great things are accomplished alone. Seriously, all the greatest accomplishments in the world were done with team and tremendous support provided to whoever's in charge of it.
Well, I'm really intrigued with your SEAL Fit training because you've been able to, through that training, reduce the attrition, it sounds like. And so I'm really curious about how you're doing that, if someone's going through that training versus if they just go straight into BUDS or, just straight into that training without going through the SEAL Fit program that you've developed.
Well, the SEAL Fit program that I originally started it for Spec Ops candidates and particular SEALs, but it was open to anybody. Now it's open to all, most of our clients are actually professionals and people who just want to take part in the training to become better people. But the way it works is, if we have two programs. One is a crucible type experience, which is like Hell Week, which is just intense, nonstop, 50 hours of training, physical and mental training.
Right.
So that kind of simulates Hell Week. That is a must-do for SEAL candidates. A lot of guys don't come through our training and make it through SEALs. That's fine. They're typically the stronger ones, or they've got their own crucible experiences that they've been through. Like college wrestlers or even some high school wrestlers. That's a great program for the SEALs because it really, wrestling is a gut-busting sport, and it requires a lot of discipline, a lot of fortitude, a lot of determination to stay the course over, several years of wrestling. Those skills tend to translate very well to the SEALs.
Interesting.
But a lot of folks, if you didn't have those, or even if you did, SEAL Fit has become kind of an insurance policy. I've said in the past that we like to inoculate you against failure. And the folks who come through SEAL Fit who are serious about becoming a SEAL, we teach them the mental skills, similar to the ones that I had, but I've been, refining them and honing them and adding to them over the years. So we teach you the mental skills that make you indomitable, right? That's that non-quitting spirit, the ability to be a great teammate, the ability to control your mind and emotions in the most intense circumstances like pool comp or drawn proofing or whatever, right? And we'll give you those skills. We do it through that 50-hour program, and we do it through a 2-week, 18 days actually, special ops immersion academy. So that's nonstop. Well, it's not nonstop, but it's live-in training here at our headquarters in Encinitas, California. We train from 5 in the morning until like 8 or 9 at night. Sometimes, late in the night. And then the graduation exercise is the 50-hour Kokoro camp. So these folks, the guys who come to the Spec Ops Academy, and we have a 5-day version too, they tend to do extremely well in SEAL training. I think anecdotally, because I don't have exact records, it's about 90% success rate.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds like you're almost giving them in a way just a taste of what's to come and being realistic. And that's what I noticed when I went through basic training is the guys who succeeded and who were able to get through it relatively easily were the ones that have been in athletics before, like you said, wrestling or football, baseball,
Sure.
whatever it may be, or maybe they had a parent or a sibling who had gone through it before, and so they went to the table with clear expectations of what it was going to actually be like.
Right, and you hit on a really important point, that it's important to have an honest assessment of your starting point of where you're at. We've had a lot of SEAL candidates come out through here and quit our training, and then they're already on contract with the Navy, and so we tell them, hey, don't go. Go tell your recruiter you got injured, or you changed your mind and you want to go next fall or something like that, but don't go. If you came and you couldn't make it through SEAL Fit, you're never going to make it through BUDS. And about half of them agree and have the courage to go back and to do that, and about the other half are like, no, I'm on contract, so I'm going to stick to it. I think I'll make it, and of course they don't.
Right.
So then they're off chipping paint on the USS Never Sail or something like that. So we want we want to have a good assessment of where you're at, and so SEAL Fit programs tend to give you that assessment, because it's game on. It is every bit as hard for the limited time period as SEAL training. That's the key. Like, SEAL training is hard because it's 9 months long, and SEAL Fit is hard, but it's only 5 days long.
Right.
Or 18 days long, and you can suck it up for that long. But the most important thing is we don't just want you to suck it up and get through it. We want to teach you the skills of mental toughness and resiliency and leadership and teaming, and so we give you that skills, and we test you under pressure and make sure you understand what you're facing, if you're going down that path.
So let's talk about,
by the way, this is extremely valuable too if you're a business professional or any endeavor in life, not just for Spec Ops candidates, because what SEALs learn is how to navigate and win in the most chaotic, dangerous, and murky situations in the world known to man, and business is starting to look a lot like that these days, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely. Let's talk about how, and I think the point that you're bringing up, and this was one of the chapters I enjoyed in the book, was, I think it's called Establishing Your Set Point, if I remember correctly.
You're right, yeah, that was it.
How does that translate, because that's what you're talking about in SEAL training and military training, how does establishing your set point transition into civilian life, whether it's with your family or your business, whatever it may be?
Well, in the context of business or professional life, what I mean by that is to know who you are. So a lot of people, they will begin with trying to get with a wish or desire of some place that they'd like to be. That's not here, right? So they say,
right.
I want to be a successful businessman, or I want to be a partner at the CPA firm, or I want to have my own business and earn $1 million. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's great. That's a loose notion of a possible future, and we can tighten that up quite a bit. By the way, through proper visualization and planning techniques, we can get a very clear vision, a very detailed description and articulated mission for what that looks like. That's all fine and good, but as you push off to execute toward that, if you don't know where you stand now, then you'll never get there, right? It's kind of like you set off on a mission and you don't know where you are, then you can't navigate to where you want to go, right? You need both.
Right.
You need both. That's what the set point is. It's kind of a GPS reference. So the set point for professionals and for anyone really is a deep understanding of your skills physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, of your practical and tactical skills. Like if you want to be a partner at a CPA firm and you've never even taken an accounting class, then you better set some targets up that are going to give you the practical and tactical skills. And then there's the becoming type goals or skills. Like, what type of person do you need to be? And this is, really rings home with a lot of SEAL candidates. Like, ultimately, SEAL training is about character. I mean, they're testing your character.
Right.
And a lot of guys come in and say they think it's all about just, like we've been talking about, just the physical side, or even if they're mentally tough, they can still be jerks, right? And if you're mentally tough and you're physically tough and you're a jerk, you're still not going to make it through SEAL training.
Right.
So you've got to have an honest assessment of where you're at so that you can then fill the gaps between, where you are now and where you need to be in order to be even remotely successful at that goal that you're going after. It's equally as important to work on filling the gaps and knowing yourself and your set point so that you build that foundation so that as you push off toward that goal, you're pushing off against a firm foundation. And you can always answer the question why you're doing something, and you know where you stand on things. So when danger comes your way, or when people start questioning you or challenging you, that you have a firm ground to stand on, and you can make good decisions. You don't waver. You don't lose confidence. You're able to stay the course.
And I think that can be so hard, is establishing that set point. I know a year and a half ago I weighed 50 more pounds than I do today. And one of the hardest things, I knew what I had to do. I mean, we know, eat better, exercise, right? I mean, there's not a whole lot to it. But the hardest thing was starting because I was so afraid to get on the scale. Like, I knew I was overweight, but I was so afraid of getting on the scale because of that gap, like you said, of where I was today and where I knew I wanted to be.
Right. Yeah, and you know what? That gap is big when you have a big goal.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's interesting, but it doesn't really take any more work to go after a big goal than it does a small goal. It's just that it seems more overwhelming. The reality is you just have to chunk it down into smaller pieces, right? If you have to lose 100 pounds, then you got to have a little bit longer timeline, and you have to chunk it down into more bite-sized chunks, so to speak, than if you just need to lose 20 pounds. You know what I mean?
Right.
At the same, and you might have to have a higher level of commitment and really, really make this a number one priority. I always say that you have to have one thing. It could be one thing in different areas of your life, but there's like one thing that is the most important thing that you're moving toward every day. And you have actions and thought around it every single day, and imagery and visualization. And it might be a new business launch, or a book you're writing, or for some might be getting the Navy SEAL Trident, but there's always one thing. There's one thing in your life, and then there's one thing in a longer period of time that you're driving toward that's connected to that, and then there's one thing that you're working on right now that's connected to that. And in fact, I was just I'm having a conversation with, I wish I could remember his last name, Jay, the author of a book called One Thing. And it's really neat because he's got the same philosophy, and he actually uses that term, one thing, obviously, because he wrote a book about it. Right. But it's a really good book, and it helps you understand how to focus, right? And the SEALs know how to focus. Like, I learned this in the SEALs. I didn't learn it from his book, but when I read his book, I wanted to reference it right away because he really helped kind of narrow that concept down for me. But
is that book by Gary Keller? That's one that I've read. One thing.
Gary Keller is the co-author. He's the founder of Keller Williams, and it's Jay something was his partner.
Papa San, is that right?
That's right. You got it.
Yeah. That's a great book. I totally agree.
Definitely.
So one of the things I want to talk about, I was going to tell you this story, is about 2 years ago, I led a youth group on just under 20-mile hike over 2 days, and it was a pretty tough hike. There's a lot of inclines and a lot of variations in elevation. And I told the boys, I think there was 6 of them at the time, and I said, we need to come up with a motto as we go on this hike and what we're going to do this hike by. And what they came up with was, I will find a way or make one.
Oh, cool.
And then I saw that in your book, and that totally resonated with me. So I want to talk about finding a way or making one.
Right. What I mean by that is, when it has to do with taking, it has to do with an attitude of failure not being an option. Right? So as you have a plan, let's say you decide that you're going to, change careers. And so you get a plan together, and you spend some time obviously researching and figuring out what it is you want to do and how you're going to do it and what classes you got to take and blah, blah, blah. And then you begin to execute toward that plan. Well, guess what? It never, ever works out the way you conceived it. It'd be a pure miracle if it does. In the SEALs, we learned this, and I'm sure, when you were in the National Guard, you learned this as well. So once you go out the wire, the plan pretty much gets put on the shelf, and you have to become very adaptable to the circumstances. You have to flow with the circumstances. So same thing executing any business or project. And when you come across an obstacle, instead of stopping or shirking or falling back or retreating, SEALs are taught to find a way around that obstacle over it, under it. And if none of those, work, then we have to make a way. We might like make a bridge, right? Or literally make a tool that works or make a new plan, right? But bottom line is the obstacles just became opportunities to figure out how to solve it a different way. And that's really what we mean by find a way or make a way. Is like there's no here. Like we will get this mission done. This is just a temporary interruption in our forward progress, but it allows us now the opportunity to pause and figure out a way to get it done a little bit better or a little bit more creatively. And we're grateful for it. You know what I mean? We're not sitting there and, with gnashed teeth and going all negative about, how things are all fucked up and this and that. I mean, it's basically, here we are, let's figure it out.
It's so exciting to live life like that. I know here's a story to a lesser degree. I told my son the other day to take the trash out, and he grabbed the trash bag and he went outside, and he came back in literally 10 seconds later, and he said, I can't reach the trash can, I can't put it in. And I said, son, that's your job.
Find a way.
So you go back out there and find a way to get the trash in the can, and then you can come back in when you're done with your job.
Nice.
So he goes back outside, and I kind of kept an eye on him, and he was looking around trying to figure out how to do this. And he pulled this bench over to the trash can, lifted the lid, threw the trash can in, put the bench back, and came back in. His head and shoulders were higher than I'd ever seen him. He's so proud of himself that he found a way to accomplish the task, and then he could relax after that. So I know it's to a smaller degree, but illustrates the point.
Future Navy SEAL. That's awesome.
That's right. That's right. Well, hey, we're winding down on time, Mark. A couple of things left, a couple of questions. The first one is, and I asked this to all my guests, and I didn't prep you for this question, so putting you on the spot a little bit, but what do you think it means to be a man?
First of all, let me say that men have really taken some hits in this time of our, development as a country, I don't know if you knew these stats, but I recently was at a conference I'm on the board of the Center for Integral Wisdom, and there's a fellow named Warren Farrell there who's really done a lot of work with both girls and boys research and stuff like that. In fact, he's the guy who started the White House Council on Girls and Women, and now he's lobbying to start a White House Council on Boys and Men.
Interesting.
Yeah, so put him on your list and tell him I sent you. I could probably hook you up too as an interview. So anyways, he said that, he was talking about suicide. He said, from the ages of like 1 to 9, basically boys and girls don't commit suicide, but it does happen. But they're basically at the same rate, and it's very low. But then from 10 to 15, boys are twice as likely to commit suicide as girls, right? And it doesn't stop there, right? From 16 to like 21, it's 4 times. And then from 22 to 20, don't quote me on these exact brackets.
Right.
Like 26, it's 6 times, something like that. It's unbelievable, the magnitude. And his whole point is that boys and even men have been just demonized, by the feminist movement. It swung the pendulum so far in the opposite direction that guys are made to look like wimps or assholes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so what I think, to answer your question is like, I was very fortunate to be around some incredibly powerful men and role models through the Navy SEALs, through my martial arts training. And I try to provide that role model to my tribe with SEAL Fit and Unbeatable Mind and to, obviously my family. And what it means is just to be authentic, right? To be authentic about developing yourself, to be present, with your family and your teams, and to do the work to be strong, right? Nobody likes a wimp, and I cringe when wimps, when I'm around wimps. Like, come on, I don't care if you don't think of yourself as, Arnold Schwarzenegger. In fact, a lot of those bodybuilders are wimps too. You know what I mean? And if you're a bodybuilder listening, I'm not speaking to you. You know who I'm talking about. People who hide behind their muscles and they're all puffy in their ego. Real men work on their ego. They're humble. Real men take time to be useful, and they're not self-centered. They're coaching their kids' teams in high school or middle school. They're helping out with fundraisers. They're being a role model. They're not selfish. They get out of their own way. And also, real men don't wallow in a pity party about how life sucks or how much of a victim they are. Real men take care of business, figure things out, and continue to move forward growing and learning every day, right? So that's kind of it. There's a ton more I could say about it, but men take responsibility for their actions and those of their teammates, and they earn their trident every day. And the trident's the Navy SEAL insignia, and so they don't sit back and waiting for the government or anyone else to give them a handout.
Right. Such a great answer. We're going to leave it there, but before we do, I want to let everybody know how they can connect with you. If they want to know about SEALFIT training, they want to know about your book or how to connect and learn more about what you're doing, how do they do that?
Oh, great question, Ryan. So anyone's really interested in the training of SEALFIT or just wants to be inspired, we have a ton of videos, and I have a blog that comes out every week and a podcast, and that's all at sealfit.com, SEALFIT, all one word, .com. If you're interested in my mental training, it's called Unbeatable Mind. You can either start with a book, just go to Amazon.com and search for Unbeatable Mind, or we have an online training academy, which I had a couple thousand people go through. They love it, and that's at unbeatablemind.com, again, all one word. And, Ryan, I'd love to offer your listeners a couple copies of my book, The Way of the SEAL, or Unbeatable Mind, or one of each. So if you want to figure out how to give those away, then I'd be very pleased to ship them out.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, we'll take you up on that offer for sure. It's a great book. I read through it, and so I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right, Mark, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks again for joining us today.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks, Ryan. Good luck with everything.
Thanks for joining us today, men. As you saw, the show was jam-packed with a ton of information on how you can clear your mind as the foundation for success in your life. Now, if you're anything like me, it's difficult to take a step back and just slow down for a minute. So reminders like this in my life are always helpful. Now, if you're running or working out or driving or whatever, and you want to get some of the information about this episode and you don't have access to that right now, remember that you can head over to orderofman.com/016 to get all the information and the notes from the show. And while you're there, please, again, leave us a rating or review. We're at 92 reviews right now, and we're trying to break 100 this week, so you can do that at orderofman.com/iTunes. Now, next week, I have a conversation with an entrepreneur who left his previous job to pursue a passion and a hobby of his. He's just got back from a month-long trip to Europe and for a business conference, and then also visiting his manufacturers and distributors in China. And he's going to talk with us all about why and how to pursue your passion and then turn that into a career. So you will not want to miss that. So be sure to subscribe to the show right after you leave that review. And guys, I will look forward to being with you here next week. But until then, take action and become the man you were meant to be.
Thank you for listening to the Order of Man podcast. If you're ready to take charge of your life and be more of the man you were meant to be, we invite you to join the Order at orderofman.com.